Hello, everyone, and welcome to ESPN FC Live Weekly. We're on this live stream right here on YouTube 3 times a week, where we're talking about all the latest news in the football world, just like a little appetizer before ESPN FC, which you know is our daily football show that's on 7 days a week. I'm Alexis Nunes. Joining me is Mark Ogden. We are waiting for our guest of honor, which is Craig Burley. He's always fashionably late, Mark. But let's start off with Manchester United, shall we? I think it is pretty much fitting to start off there. I know it is international break coming up. You'd think there'd be a lull in things to talk about. But United, of course, so much to talk about here. Pretty much about how it's looking like a hot mess there for Erik ten Hag and company. And I'm not just talking about the loss to Arsenal. I think a lot of people did even expect Arsenal to win that one. I actually didn't think United did too badly until the Garnacho goal was ruled offside, and then pretty much all hell broke loose. But everything from Jadon Sancho's comments clapping back to Erik ten Hag saying that he doesn't choose him in his team based on how he performs in training. There's also Andre Onana that it looks like his participation in AFCON, which is yet to be fully confirmed, could leave United without arguably one of their best players come January. And then, of course, there's just all of the injuries, crucial injuries, big name injuries, multiple injuries to the defense. We'll get to all of that in a bit, but let's start off with the juicy stuff, and that is Jadon Sancho versus Erik ten Hag. Round one, war of words, so much so that Jadon Sancho hasn't even deleted his tweet just yet. I know you were recently on the Gab and Jules show, and you guys had a little chat about it.
They're not going to cancel Sancho's contract because it would cost them an absolute mint.
But is it right for a manager to expose him like that and throw him under the bus? Ten Hag could have said a lot of things like, he didn't feel great this week, anything, instead of just saying like, clearly he's rubbish, he doesn't train well, and so I literally dropped him.
That, to me, is the issue here, Jules, because it's unusual for a manager to come out and say this unless it's something where we're pushing him out the door, like they tried to do with Cristiano or whatever. Especially, the window's just closed. Let me go and throw this guy under the bus.
Well, this is the issue because there was some United were prepared to let Sancho go. And there were some suggestions there was an interest in him last week that he wasn't open to accepting Sancho. So if United found a club and he wasn't willing to go, then Ten Hag would be unhappy about that. But you're right. It was September the 3rd yesterday. The window's just closed. You've got a player that you can't shift until January unless he goes to Turkey or Saudi Arabia, which neither seem an option. So for me, there's no way back for Sancho because he's completely defied his manager and gone against him publicly. How does Ten Hag bring him back in when there's clearly a breakdown of trust there? So you've got now, 3-4 months of this player just, sulking, I guess, because he's not been picked, and Ten Hag sticking to his guns. Because I don't see who backs down here. Sancho's come out and said what he said. Ten Hag isn't going to back down. And, because if he backs down, then having criticised Rashford and Ronaldo publicly in the past, it's a sign of weakness on his part. So I see no way back for Sancho.
What a fiasco this has been.
You heard it here first. Sancho back on loan to Borussia Dortmund in January, with United paying the bulk of his wages. Would that not solve the situation?
He's on very big wages.
And why would Dortmund take him? Who's going to take him now?
Well, because Dortmund, you be big on the Adeyemi brand.
No, but it doesn't matter even the players that you have. Like, you think, okay, this is a player that will not play between now and January, or hardly play. He might play a bit in the...
Okay, all right.
No, but you know what I mean? Who's going to take that gamble?
I was joking.
He's had 2 bad years. They overpaid for a player that nobody else wanted.
But that's why I think a loan solution is the only... I mean, we've seen this happen, right?
Yeah.
Is the only way out.
Really good at Dortmund the last season. There was a time where he was really, really good. So he can be good, but... there's clearly a lot of baggage too.
Clearly a lot of baggage, Jules says. One time we were praising Jadon Sancho and his signing at Manchester United. Now how things have deteriorated. Let's bring in Craig Burley, who's finally decided to join us, which is absolutely brilliant. But Augie, let me go first to you on this one. Wow, we're all kind of like reading this up today. I love this look for us. But Augie, like I said, let's start off with you on this one, this whole Jadon Sancho fiasco going on. As you said, it feels like there's just really no way back for him, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if there is a way back for him, the first thing he has to do is delete that tweet, because while that's still at the top of his Twitter page, it's basically saying, look, I haven't changed my mind. I still feel like I've been let down and almost betrayed by the manager. So that isn't a good start. And I think, if Jadon Sancho was one of United's best players, then I suppose there would be a way back. But he's not been one of the best players. He hasn't been one of the best players since he signed. Now you've got a guy that isn't playing well, and according to his manager, isn't training well. So that's quite a negative combination. And if you want to get back in the team, it ain't going to work, is it? Especially if you start saying that your manager is saying things that are, in Jadon's words, completely untrue. about your training performances. So, you know, I said on the Gavin Jules show, there's no way back for Sancho. Now, obviously, there always is. I mean, the one example of that is Carlos Tevez. I mean, I was covering Man City when he refused to come off the bench against Bayern Munich back in the day, and that looked to be the end. And he came back that season and helped City win the league. So there's always a way back. But in this scenario, I don't see how, because, you know, Tevez was a great player, was performing. Sancho is neither. He's not a great player, not at the moment, and he's not performing. So why would Ten Hag bring him back? You know, United are in a bit of a hole right now in terms of results and performances. So what you need is players that you can rely upon. You can't rely on Jadon Sancho. And clearly you can't rely on him if he's going to come out and say things that he said about, you know, not his manager, but people that are making him a scapegoat. No, nobody's made Jadon Sancho a scapegoat. And as far as I can see, Man United really helped him get back on track last season when he had his issues on and off the pitch. And nobody's been coming out and criticising that United, saying that it's his fault and that he should be doing better. So I don't know where he's getting that from. But where it stands right now, he's in a bit of a hole because he's not playing well, he's not training well. His manager thinks he's gone beyond the pale by saying what he did about, you know, defying what the manager said.
Well, to someone now who is my personal expert in arguments, Craig, let me bring you in on this one, because especially as a former player, it's never good when you see them, you know, publicly calling each other out, player and manager. But do you kind of feel for Jadon Sancho any at all, or do you see where Erik Ten Hag's coming from?
Well, Erik Ten Hag seems to be coming from a place where he has a player who he perceives is not performing, certainly not training properly, by his own words, and he's not performing, as Augie said, on the field. So he's not much use to anybody at the moment. And I think if I'm Jadon Sancho, I just got to look myself in the mirror and say, play better, work harder, and don't get in some sort of ongoing tiff with your manager, because there's only going to be one winner. Look, United are not missing Jadon Sancho on the pitch, really, for all the reasons that Augie said. Now, maybe there is a player in there that is going to come out at some point and perform, but it looks, there's certainly been nothing in the last year and a half to suggest that's going to be the case. And it's just another problem for the manager. But as Mark said, when you're not deleting your tweet either, or whatever way he posted it, then that's kind of rubbing salt in the wound. So there only ever is one winner here, and it will be Erik Ten Hag. So Jadon Sancho just has to sort himself out, and we'll see how this pans out.
Craig, one thing that I've been told, speaking to people at United over the last couple of days, is that a lot of the players aren't happy with Sancho, that they basically lost a little bit of patience with him. Now, a lot of fans haven't been able to grasp that. I think they think that that's just suggesting that he's unpopular because of who he is. But I think the idea is that in training, he's not doing what is expected of him. And as a former player, do you get that? Do you have players, you know, or teammates that you can see out putting it in training and are basically letting everyone down and frustrating the players because they're not pulling their weight, I guess?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. And I you know, several players, and particularly my time at Celtic, when things changed at boardroom level and different players came in. And, you know, I'll give you an example. Ayo Berkovic actually was actually a player who actually trained and performed pretty well, but he was an absolute pain in the butt in the dressing room, got on with nobody, and it really sort of split the dressing room a little bit. The other guy would be, and I'm not suggesting he'll let anybody down, but I think when I look at somebody who kind of sense wasn't committed when he came to Celtic, it was Mark Viduka. Now, Mark Viduka came in, super talented player, but went missing for a month or two off the back of just signing, and Fergus McCann, the owner at the time, dispatched himself to Zagreb to try and find him. And you know, once I left the club, not long after that, apparently there was a bit of a scrap in the dressing room over lack of effort in a game which, you know, you'll remember when Celtic lost to Inverness, Caledonian Thistle in the Cup, and at the time it was a huge giant killing. And you know, I'd only been left the club a couple of months, and apparently in that dressing room at half-time, things got very feisty. So when you have players like this that on the face of it don't seem committed, it rubs other players up the wrong way. If I'm in that dressing room, right, and I'm not trying to say any of us were the perfect professional, not at all, but when you're in a dressing room and you're trying to achieve something, and there is somebody quite clearly not on the same page, in my experience, senior players, Augie, will pull that player to the side and say, you sort yourself out. You need to do this better. You need to do that better. You need to figure this out. Now, if that player doesn't take that on board and basically sticks two fingers up at the senior players, there's not a lot you can do about it. There's not a lot you can do about it. It's then over to the manager. But my experience of any player, whether they be a young player or a senior player, who for whatever reason decided to mail it in, was you have to, as a group, speak to that player. And I would imagine there's probably one or two at least at United have taken Sancho and others aside and say, listen, you need to be better.
Well, like I said, plenty of problems, it seems, for Manchester United, not just that result and performance against Arsenal. We mentioned how they do have quite a number of big-name defensive injuries. Then there's also the potential that they could lose Onana for about a month, pending his confirmation that he's not just coming out of international retirement for the one game. If he does,
but is there any good news coming out of United at the moment?
There's no good news. That's what I was saying. It's like absolutely doom and gloom. Augie, you're up there in Manchester. From the whispers that you may be hearing, how do they right this ship so it doesn't look like the circus that we have seen at Old Trafford for many seasons already?
Can I just add that as well, the share price had a record drop on the New York Stock Exchange on Tuesday as well. So £500 million wiped off the value of the club. So that might be good news for the fans. It might make the Glazers want to sell. But anyway, I digress. Is there any good news?
How do they write it?
No, I thought Rasmus Højlund would look decent. I think Rasmus Højlund might actually be a way that they can write it, because I thought he brought some work rate to the forward line at Arsenal when he came on for 20 minutes. And that sounds like a kind of a basic, but Man United's forward line hasn't worked very hard for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think with Højlund in the team, they'll work harder, they'll put more pressure on opposition defences, they'll make it easier for United to play. So maybe he is the glimpse of light, but obviously he's a young kid and he can't say at 20 years old he's going to be the salvation. But I'm looking for thin pickings there. I know Alexis think I'm quite downbeat at times, but I'm trying to be positive, you know what I mean? So I think Rasmus Højlund is the ray of light down the tunnel somewhere. But yeah, listen, things can get better, but they might not get better quickly. They might look. Lisandro Martinez went off injured at the weekend as well. I do worry about the back four, that they've got a goalkeeper behind him who's very good with his feet, but people that like Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka aren't very good with the feet. So it'll take time to find the way. But United have got Brighton at home next, so there you go. That's a cheerful thought, isn't it?
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis, and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.